I do. The reason that this came into about, or even what agency operations is, which I'll get into in a little bit. My background is in hospitality and finance. That's what I studied in school. And a local e-commerce agency in 2019 asked me if I wanted to buy the office snacks and do the billing. So I'm glad my 2 degrees could amount to something. And then COVID hit. So that agency grew from 50 to 300 people. Some of that was staff augmentation there. And so I moved into a full-on accounting manager and hired a really angry Russian CPA to work over me, and learned a lot there. But I was really sick and tired of paying people full-time, but noticing that they're not logging full-time hours, and no one wanted to hear from the accounting manager on sharing that analysis month over month. So I decided to do something about it, and that's what really broke me into the operations role, where I could really kind of come in and own the areas that no one was owning. So from sales to delivery back to sales, who is asking people what they're good at, what do they want to learn, making sure that we're fully utilizing the team's time, and really making data-informed decisions around our people, processes, and systems. So that was in 2019. I moved and helped a startup do the same thing after that. That's when I met Rachel and started doing it because I noticed that there was a gap for a ton of agencies like you guys. So we specialize mostly with retention and Shopify agencies, but we work with agencies that do it all, Amazon agencies, but all e-commerce, right? And we really help. We have a team, about 7 of us. We all specialize in different areas, some truly in AI and automations, others in the HR area, some in Shopify, some in retention. We really kind of come in and help you guys button up all the areas, again, that you hate doing is what we love to do. So talking about agency operations, it really is the glue kind of holding everything together. It can be kind of treated as an afterthought, right? It's more common now that someone in the agency has this title, right? Maybe operator, I hear sometimes, but that's really head of all services. It's really saying hey, I'm the CEO and I don't want anyone to report to me, so I have an operator. Does that mean that they're automatically doing operations? No. Operations is really combining and understanding what's everyone working on, right? How does the pipeline feed into our team's capacity? How can we scale without founder? Or again, how Angus was talking about, those heads of roles, right? They really bloat even the P&L, and they kind of can become unnecessary, but a lot of mature agencies have them and think oh, this is amazing. Well, all I see is non-billable flags flying everywhere. So, when it is left ignored, operations in the agency, there are a lot of silos. There's a lot of founder dependency. Your profitability may look good or bad. It has no. It cannot have not. It can sometimes not have a correlation to that, right? You can be doing operations really well, but still have shit profitability. So we'll dive into that in a little bit. But when it is done well, new team members can get onboarded quicker, and they actually know what is expected of them. They have KPIs that they know where to actually find them, and they know what success looks like in their role, and they're focused on making clients happy faster. And not being able to rely on the founder or those heads of in order to do a good job. So no matter what service lines you have as an agency or how big or how small you are, these are the different areas that I like to track and that I like to think of as the core agency operations metrics. So we'll start out with utilization, so of a person's time, how much of it is billable. And this one, surprisingly, a lot of agencies don't track overall utilization. They're oh, as long as a person's hitting their billable targets, I don't care what they're doing for the rest of the time. I will never understand that. If you're paying someone full-time, or even if they're a freelancer and they're telling you they're available 40 hours, wouldn't you like to know, right, how much of that time that you're actually taking advantage of, right, before you have to go hire someone else to do the work. So within that, we also like to look ahead. So a lot of agencies, if they're doing some kind of capacity planning, it's usually at a task level. I like to look at a holistic level. What's everyone working on all the way through December? And let's plug in all of the holidays and time off, right? And kind of plan for those things proactively versus just looking at utilization on a retroactive basis. I don't even know if this thing's on or if I'm just loud. Yeah. Okay. And so for delivery margin, we all should be striving for 70 to 75%. That's all of our projects and also in our P&L as well. I like to call this delivery margin because there's a little bit more that can go into your gross profit margin on your P&L. But for your team members, we should be tracking to 70%. On the retention side, I see sometimes like 60% is more of an achievable target, but we really should be striving for 70. On the P&L side, I'd like to see that our cost of goods sold are no greater than 50% of our income, that our overhead expenses, our business expenses are no greater than 30% of our income, and that leaves 20% for our net profitability. If you're going to come to my round table later and tell me that you guys have a 30% net profitability, that's not cool to me. That just means that you probably have more areas that you can be reinvesting into the business, like in AI and automations. So if you're doing that and you know, you have all these numbers, that's awesome. You want to be able to have the money to reinvest into your business. So shooting for 20% allows you to do that. When you're a smaller agency, it's easier. I like to think that you're printing money because you don't have all those heads of. Those heads of are your execution team. When the agency grows, it's harder to meet those numbers. So and then KPIs and OKRs, a lot of you guys probably have KPIs as the founder, but I like to set KPIs for every single person in the agency. And they just, of course, track how are we doing or how fast are we moving along the way. But a lot of agencies are kind of missing the other part of that, which is the OKRs, objectives and key results. So what are the strategic, non-numerical goals that we're trying to hit as an agency, like adopting AI and automations in every department, right? But how are we doing that? Not just setting that as the goal, but when are we doing that? Who owns it? What does success look like in 30, 60, 90 days for every department and every person on the team? They can get involved in those. Yeah, so when I'm working with agencies, it's always been the goal is that operations is supposed to make us smarter, more efficient, and less founder reliant and less silos in the agency. AI and automations have those same goals, right? To help us work smarter, not harder, to share context without it having to live in our brains. And so those two things have worked really well together, and it just has allowed us to move a little bit quicker. And also with operations, like we were building so many reports and spreadsheets, and even years ago at these summits, I was handing out links or QR codes for spreadsheets, and today I'll be handing you guys a QR code for a prompt that you can use with the tool Lovable that Will has made me obsessed with. So it's just a shift in how we're doing things and the speed in which we're doing them, but in operations, the goal is to give visibility into different areas of the business that sometimes maybe only the founder has access to, so you're kind of telling the team like, hey, we really have to do better at XYZ, but they don't have their own visibility into that. And AI and automations have allowed us to give that kind of segmented visibility to our team members and also to the clients that you serve. Yeah, so, and not to say if you're doing these things, it's not good, okay? But you're here to become great, not just good. So I want to challenge the way that you're doing operations and automations, right? So I do hear this a lot that like, yeah, we're tracking utilization or we have estimates and actuals on our tickets, right, in our project management system. But do you know a person's utilization rate, right, on a billable and overall basis? Do you know the opportunity cost for that team member? Meaning of the time that they didn't work, if we multiply that by our billable rate, how much revenue could we have generated? Even if we're on a Tainer model, it's not an excuse to not track that, right? So also as well, like we may have KPIs and also your sales team, if that's not you yourself, that's awesome. They may have KPIs. So they may be saying, oh, it's April 30th. We're going to count this deal towards April. But the finance person surely isn't counting that towards April. They're counting that towards May, right? So the story being told in the agency can be wildly different. Sales is hitting their targets, but finance is telling us we need to make cuts. So sometimes these things don't match up, and that's where operations can really come in and tie things together. But we really, and so, I mean, everyone has mentioned it, right? Like using AI is only as good as the data that we're putting into it. And so we need to also give it the context. Like you can't just say, hey, read my time logs and tell me the utilization rates. Here's this presentation that Tiara said in Australia. Like there's context that's involved there, right? Agency context. And so you need to kind of train AI, whatever tool you're going to use, in order to understand that, right? On the other side, a lot of agencies will tell me, oh, well, we're so unique. We do this so differently. It's not that unique, guys. You have people, they log time. If they're not logging time, it's not cool. It's not, you're behind in that. And there's no good excuse that you could come to my table and tell me of why your team is not logging their time. Okay, I'll get off the soapbox on that. Let's talk about resource planning, right? So project management tools, if you're using them well, they're not half-baked. You have estimates and your team is logging time to those tickets and you have estimates versus actuals. That's really awesome. But what about planning for, at a holistic level, what is everyone doing now through, the end of the quarter, the end of the next quarter, every project that they're working on, how many hours per week per role, and also all the internal things that they should be working on, whether that's calls, if they're being pulled into sales deals, if they're a solutions architect and they're being pulled into everything in the universe, we should be planning for their time. If you have A+ team members and you're telling me that you don't want them to log their time because it'll hurt your culture and you don't want to micromanage them, all you're doing is not protecting your A+ team members. If you don't know where their time is going and you don't know when or how they need support or where they may need support. They're only gonna tell you when they're like on fire and it's too late, and finding good talent takes time, right? So you need time to properly do that. We've been able to set up capacity planners and resource planning using AI, and we also have been able to integrate that with the agency's CRM tools so that if they have a probability of, a deal that's in verbal commitment or in an audit phase, or 50% chance of closing or higher, we're able to plug that into the capacity planner tool and start to plan ahead of time on who's going to do this work and when. And if no matter how we slice or dice, trying to figure out the Jenga of who's going to work on this, we can't find anyone available. We know then, hey, we need to go flag to whoever's doing recruiting that we need to start opening up a rec for this role. And even if that one particular deal isn't going to close, there's going to be another one in the future, right? Or 10 more in the future. So it's never a bad idea to start those efforts sooner. We also want to be able to tell recruiting, like, what is the budget, right? Usually we can't tell that. We just say, like, hey, we pay our current team this, like, try to find it in that range, right? We can now be a little bit more proactive. We build a lot of financial forecasts for our agencies where we're able to plug in those deals that are 50% chance or higher of closing, see what that does to our P&L, and also plug in resources that we'd like to hire for and understand at all times what does our bottom line look like and where are we trending. So our goal is still the same. It's to have visibility, but I see a lot of CEOs doing like mental gymnastics or getting on a call and showing me like, oh, okay, well, if this deal closes and this deal closes, then we add this to our revenue, and they're like kind of like trying to back up into what the net profitability is, and we don't have to work that hard. We can have these forecasts kind of built for us, but you want to do it in a safe space. So you don't want to do it in your project management system, because also if you're trying to plan for deals that haven't closed yet, then all of a sudden you're getting notifications like, hey, I've been added to this project. I don't know anything about it. We haven't had the sales or delivery call yet. What's going on? It's like, hold on. Hasn't even signed yet. I'm just trying to figure out what's going on and trying to plan proactively. So you want to be able to do that outside of your project management tool. Same thing for your financial forecasting. You don't want to start adding in deals that haven't closed yet to your P&L and drafting invoices. One, because your accountant will probably say no, they're not going to do that. And number two, it's like bad juju. I don't want to plug anything in or muddy up the waters in my accounting system, but I do want to see like, oh, if all these deals closed, like how awesome would this look, right? And if none closed, how awful would this look? So we can kind of play with all those scenarios in a safe space. Talking about utilization reporting, so hopefully everyone in the room is having their teams track time, but the actual time logs can do so much. They're so powerful only if we're able to analyze that, right? And usually the project management systems don't do a wonderful job at that, but we can do that. You can do that on your own by building these tools out. You'll see it in the prompt that I give you. And we're able to kind of see and flag ahead of time like, hey, this person, it looks underutilized, this person's looking overutilized, and we can do something about it ahead of time versus seeing it on the P&L that, hey, we've paid people, full-time, they're not working full-time, or we've had all this, if they're hourly, right, they're working overtime. Yeah, and we've had to pay for that as well. So good or bad, we're able to get those flags there, and we're able to do something about it. I get asked this a lot. This year was the first time someone asked this, but I'm glad it came up, so I wanted to talk about it here. And people ask me like, oh, well, how does AI affect our utilization targets? The targets should still be the same. So if you have a developer, you have a designer, their billable utilization target may be 75 to 82% billable. You can challenge me on that later, but I have my thoughts. People need to eat, breathe, walk their dog, change their laundry. Everyone works from home. So expecting people to be above 90% billable is just like, unless they're robots, which some agencies I work with, especially on the production team, maybe they are robots, but for your strategists, like they certainly need time to context switch, if nothing else. So I'll share a little bit of the examples for utilization targets that I like to set, but overall, using AI and automations doesn't lower the target. It just allows your team to work through tasks quicker if they're using AI correctly in the way that you've put the standards in place for them to use it. So they're able to pump out more work. And that's why Angus was saying, like, he's been able to grow without expanding the headcount, right? Because his team is able to work smarter and they're able to meet those targets. So again, don't need to take a picture, guys. The slides will be coming. This is just an example. You may call these roles something 10 times 10 different ways. Every agency has their own way of doing it. If you think about how you want to set utilization targets, I like to think backwards. So of a person's available time in a work week, if they have 40, I like to only plan for 35 hours because if you're trying to plan for someone's time over 35 hours, it's just unrealistic that they're going to even meet that. So of 35 hours in someone's week, how many internal hours are they going to need for town hall meetings, if they're heads of, for context switching, for any OKRs that you have them working on, right? And if you audit that alone, you may question how many internal calls that each team member is having or how often you're having those calls. So that can be a great exercise. Once you understand how much non-billable time a person needs, then you can say, okay, 35 less the non-billable time that they need. That's how many billable hours that they have to support us and to support our clients for billable work. You divide that by the total of amount of hours that they have for the week, and you're able to get those utilization targets. I want to be mindful that utilization targets, I strongly believe, are a leadership metric only to track. I do not believe that these are a KPI that you should be setting at the team member level. You don't want to make someone feel like, oh, you've hit your billable target, like you're doing really well. Well, it kind of sets the wrong precedent, the wrong kind of culture. And if they're not doing well, like, you don't want to, there's probably a reason why, right? So it's really on leadership to make sure that we are planning our team properly for the amount of work that they should be doing, that we have enough work for them to be doing, and if we don't have enough billable work, well, what other initiatives can they be working on, such as developing AI and automations for their department, right? So there's tons that they could be doing. It's on us to be able to plan their time, and it can just create really good conversations. We can say like, hey, we noticed that you haven't been hitting the billable targets that we had set. Like, is there something going on? Is there something that we can help you with? Something personal, right? There's always some kind of reason there. So it can just be a good conversation starter, but I certainly wouldn't develop it as like an incentive program around utilization. There's a lot of other targets that you can use in KPIs, which I can share with you if you're interested. So this is the prompt. You'll have access to this code. We use Lovable. We connect Lovable with Supabase to build a lot of this stuff out. This is an example of how we build capacity planners and utilization reports. This is the prompts. If you come to my roundtable, I can show you what it actually produces and looks like. So that's all I have for today. You can connect with me. Thank you.